from Tbilisi is that Mikhail Saakashvili, the Georgian president, is about to formally declare war on Russia and to send to Parliament, to the Georgian Parliament, a decree on declaring a national state of emergency, which would basically mean presidential rule, that he would be able to control the press, set curfews, and declare full mobilization of Georgian men for the army. At the same time, there are many reports of Russian planes bombing, not just in the conflict zone in South Ossetia, but in places like the port of Poti, which is Georgia's main Black Sea port, command and control targets in the capital, Tbilisi itself, airfields around Georgia. It appears that the Russians have air superiority over the entire region now. And the Russians claim that their special forces have completely taken back the capital of Tbilisi, which Georgian forces occupied yesterday. So this is now an all-out war, and I guess soon legally will be a state of war between Georgia and Russia, not just Georgia's breakaway republic of South Ossetia, but Russia itself. And that is just the worst nightmare. I don't think a week ago we could have even imagined this.
You talked about air superiority as far as the Russia is concerned. What is the comparison as on the ground troops that Georgia has?
Well, Georgia certainly still outnumbers Russia, and some Georgian troops are very well trained. They've been trained by American special forces in recent years. They're not the rabble that they were 10 years ago. But Georgia will fully mobilize and have a couple 100,000 men under arms. It's hard to guess what the quality of those forces are. And as for Russia, it has sent the 58th Army, which is basically a division strength from their North Caucasus area into South Ossetia, and a paratroop regiment, which they're calling special forces, who are probably Russia's crack troops. It's very hard to know. There's conflicting information from South Ossetia itself about the state of play on the ground. I don't know if play is the right word there, but the state of the combat. But it seems likely that Russia can, being a giant with a lot of resources, will prevail if this comes to a long, drawn-out conflict, and Georgia doesn't have any friends to draw upon.
The United Nations reportedly was trying to put itself into the position of trying to negotiate something on this. What's their role now?
Well, I think that, you see, Russia had put before the UN Security Council its own ceasefire resolution on Thursday, and the Russians complained that the Americans stalled and sidelined that, and the Russian feeling is that the Americans wanted to give the Georgians a chance to take over South Ossetia. And now it's Georgia, backed by the United States, that wants a ceasefire resolution. And I think the Russians will stall that until they have completely taken back the territory in South Ossetia. That's basically the bone of contention there. Georgia wants to restore its control over that breakaway territory, and the Russians don't want to let them.
If a formal declaration of war is made, what does it mean for the United States then?
Well, nobody really knows. I think that President Saakashvili will be appealing to the West for more than moral support. He sounded in his televised remarks today almost desperate. And there is no formal alliance. Georgia's a friend, is a democratic ally. We use the word ally loosely in journalism, but there are no bonds that require the West to step in and help Georgia. And in fact, in almost every sense, it's probably a bridge too far. I don't think the West could sensibly come into the Caucasus and help Georgia in this situation.
The Associated Press reporting this morning that the president also said a ceasefire is possible. What's the reality of that?
Well, I think the Russian view is, as I said, they will want to completely drive the Georgian forces out of South Ossetia, and then they'll probably be happy to have a ceasefire. I don't believe, I mean, if I'm reading the mood in Moscow are right, I don't believe they want to invade Georgia itself. I don't think Russia would care to move on Tbilisi, for example. So once they have reestablished control over South Ossetia, I think they'll be happy to have a ceasefire, but probably not before.
There was also stories this morning about when it comes to Moscow, out of Moscow, who's actually in charge of this, with conflicting stories between Mr. Putin and Mr. Medvedev about who's actually leading the charge.
Yeah, I think that it is Putin who's in charge here, but Medvedev made fairly hardline statements yesterday that suggested that he is, at least publicly, on the same page as Putin.
Fred Weir with the Christians Monitor. Thank you for your time. Hope we can talk to you soon as this develops.
My pleasure.
Joining us on the set right now to give us a little more context of Mr. Weir's statement is Zeyno Baran with the Hudson Institute. From what Fred Weir said, add to your perspective about what is going on between the two countries and how resolution is met.
Okay. Well, if I may, I'd just like to add a few things. The president of Georgia is not declaring war. The war has already been declared on Georgia. And he's only saying that Georgia is in a state of war. And one of the things that his ministers made very clear is that that does not mean any freedoms on the press or other freedoms, but just to mobilize the government so that they can respond to what is a full-scale invasion, actually. So I slightly disagree that Russia would stop with South Ossetia, because they've already ordered their Black Sea fleet, because Georgia is right on the Black Sea, to another separatist region, Abkhazia, and there have been attacks outside South Ossetia. So there have been attacks on the full territory of Georgia. And so I don't see the situation really resolving anytime soon. In fact, it's getting quite out of control. And the UN Security Council decisions, now of course there's an imbalance, because Russia is a member of the Security Council. It's also a direct party to the conflict. So when on, I believe on Thursday, the first session was held, one of the language items Russia wanted in there was no use of force. And you can't have that when Georgia needs to defend its territory. And since then, I think there's a lot of this who started the first shooting, and we can get into that. But at this point, it's kind of a moot point, because the question is, obviously, Georgia is tiny compared to Russia. There is no way Georgia can win in an all-out war with Russia. And the question is, you know, why is Russia doing so much and almost like too aggressively punishing? It's beyond really international norms, beyond Russia's position at the UN or so-called peacekeeping role in the region. So this is quite serious.
But is this about entrance in NATO as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Give some context to that.
Sure, sure. Well, Georgia has been a very special case for Russia, because it is strongly independent. It's a tiny country, but its people have been overwhelmingly in favor of joining NATO, being part of the Euro-Atlantic Alliance. In 2003, they ousted the previous government because they wanted more of a democratic, more of a transparent, less corrupt government. And so